Today we're going to take a look at a cEDH build of Urza Lord High Artificer, and we're going to talk about some of the cards that you will commonly see in Urza, as well as cards that we don't play and why. So Urza costs 2 blue and 2 generic to cast. When Urza Lord High Artificer enters the battlefield, you create a 0/0 colors construct creature token. With this, gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. It gives an ability to all your artifacts that they can tap for blue mana, and for 5, you can shuffle your library, exile a top card of it, and until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. So Urza is nice because it's going to focus around artifacts. It is not going to focus around making artifact tokens per se, but it is going to be focused around those things. We do run 2 planeswalkers in our build. We run Narset Pardar Veils, which makes it so that our opponents can't draw as much, which is good. But for us, it allows us to filter a little bit and get a couple cards, possibly if we're able to down tick her twice. Tezzeret the Seeker for 2 blue and 3 generic. You can pay 1 to untap 2 target artifacts, which could be helpful to make some extra mana. Or you can -X and you search your library for an artifact card mana value X or less put on the battlefield. So this could be one of our combo pieces. This could be a mana rock, whatever we really need at the time. The -5 is not why we play Tezzeret, so we're not going to worry about that too much. Some builds of this do run Karn the Great Creator to help shut off artifacts of your opponent. The reason that I have selected not to run Karn is because honestly, we don't have enough creatures to block. And so you're going to play Karn, and maybe for 1 turn cycle, your opponents can't activate artifacts. After that, chances are your opponents are pissed about that, and they're going to swing at you. And they're going to swing more particularly at Karn, killing it. So for me, the possibility of it being a 1 turn, or likelihood of it being a 1 turn thing, just doesn't have enough value for me in the deck. If over the course of the game, this could be just backbreaking, and I understand that, but the likelihood of Karn sticking around when you're playing against so many decks that run artifacts is slim to none, and you don't have very good blockers. Sure, Urza is a 1/4, and you might have a construct, but chances are if they've got any sort of flyer, you're just going to lose your Karn, and so for me, I don't play Karn. We run 2 creatures in the deck, most of them only one. We do run a Hullbreaker Horror, which is one of our combo pieces in this Polykraken build, but we also run the Tidesprout Tyrant, and most decks no longer run the Tidesprout Tyrant. I chose it because I like to have that redundancy, and if something happens for some weird reason, and I am able to get the Hullbreaker Horror, and then I can't quite combo off because someone's able to take it out, I'm not just sitting there dead in the water. So personally, I do run both, and I know that most decks no longer do that. This is a personal choice of mine because to me, I feel like that makes the deck a little more resilient because you will try to combo off, and people are going to try to stop you. We're kind of light on sorceries in the deck. We run mainly tutors to help us get pieces, and then we do have other things that are helpful like transmute artifacts so that we can make a copy of one of our other artifacts. Time Twister, just a good old straight up wheel. Polymorph is one of our combo pieces. We can polymorph our construct token if we have one to then go and get either the Hullbreaker Horror or the Tidesprout Tyrant. And if we have an additional spell to play, like a 0-drop or a 1-drop, possibly make infinite mana and then start finding a way to close out the game. Instance, we have our normal suite of counter spells and interaction that you would come to expect in this deck. March of Swirling Mist is a great card. We can phase things out of our opponents. Stern Scolding is very similar to Spell Snare in that it is allowing us to counter a creature with power 2 or less, which is great. Same thing with Spell Snare. I like Spell Snare as well. I personally think Spell Snare is not played enough, especially in cEDH decks, because Spell Snare hits a target spell for 2 mana. At least, probably 50% of the combo pieces in cEDH. So yeah, for me, that's great. Stern Scolding hits a creature, so that's going to hit like Docksides and whatnot, so that's great. Stifle, which you don't see played all that often, we run Stifle because things like Thassa's Oracle are a thing. Things like the Nidgila triggering are a thing. And so being able to stop those triggers does make a huge difference and could mean the difference between us losing and us winning. Dramatic Reversal is in here because it's part of our combo to make infinite mana with the Isochron Scepter. Machine Over Matter is a bounce spell, and for us, It is very likely only going to cost the 1 blue because at some point we are going to have an artifact creature. So this only will cost the 1 blue if we have our construct token. Multiple Mixture is versatile. It can either tutor up something if we need to, or counter an instant or sorcery. Trick Bind, again, another way to stifle. The reason that this is even better is because then they can no longer activate abilities of any other permanent this turn. So if we are able to stifle, say, their Thassa's Oracle trigger or whatnot, they're going to really be able to do other things, but they're not activating abilities. Warrior Invention helps us get one of our combo pieces. Mind Break Trap is great because a lot of times people don't see that coming, and then it exiles the whole stack, which is even better. Artifacts, we are heavy on our artifacts, and we have a lot of cheap artifacts. You will notice a lot of 0 drops in our deck. There are a couple that may end up coming out, like Everflowing Chalice may end up eventually finding its way out because we don't ever pay the multi-kicker cost, generally speaking. We play it for 0, and then because of Urza's ability, it taps for blue, but it's one of those that are, I don't know if it's as good as it was anymore. We do run things like Manifold Key to untap another artifact. Isochron Scepter is one of our combo pieces to help us make infinite mana with Dramatic Reversal. Sapphire Medallion reduces things of ours that are blue. Torpor Orb is going to punish our opponents more than it's going to punish us. Same thing with Winter Orb. It's going to punish our opponents more. Proteus Staff is a polymorph effect, but on an artifact. So we've got a couple ways of actually doing that effect. Static Orb and Trinisphere are going to punish our opponents significantly more. And for us, it's not that big of a deal. And then, of course, we do run the One Ring. The One Ring is amazing in any deck I've seen it in. It's become a staple in cEDH. I have never regretted playing this card, no matter what point in the game I am playing it in. Our enchantments are what you would typically expect with the Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study, but we run Copy Artifact to copy one of our artifacts to make some mana, possibly making infinite mana. Counterbalance is great because with our cards being so low to the ground, we're often able to reveal a 0, 1, or 2 drop, which will counter most things that people are trying to do. Power Artifact, another way to make some extra mana and copy some of our things, which is fantastic. Back to Basics punishes so many decks. Ours, we do run some non-basics, but it's going to punish others way more. There are some decks, and I don't understand why people freaking do this with things like Path to Exile around, but they don't run any basics. Well, then they're fucked. So, Back to Basics is a great card for us. It doesn't hurt us as much. Our lands, we have things like Manamo, which you would expect to be able to untap target legendary permanent, so we could possibly untap Urza, make some extra mana, activate Urza, get a second thing from him. Inventor's Fair does gain us a little bit of life, which is okay, but it's also in the deck if we need to. For that 4 mana, we can pay and sacrifice it and go get an artifact card and put it into our hand. Mystic Sanctuary is a nice card for us. We can put something back on top of our library if we have 3 or more islands, which we likely will at any given point. Ardawara is a piece of removal or a land, depending on what we need at that time. Tabernacle you don't see much play, but this is a perfect deck for Tabernacle to be played in because we don't run very many creatures. And so for us, even if we do, let's say, have Urza and our construct, to pay 2 mana is not that big of a deal. But for other decks, it is. Especially when they have a lot more creatures, like a Najeela deck, for example. This is going to be backbreaking for them, and if they are able to pay, it's going to slow down what they're able to do because they won't have as much mana available to do things. Urza Saga could make us a construct, which is good for us, or if we get to the 3rd chapter, we could also go search for a 0 or 1 drop, and this deck is full of them, so this is going to allow us to get a lot of things and a lot of choices that are really beneficial to our deck. War Room, besides being a land, is here for a little bit of card draw. We can pay life equal to the number of colors in our commander's identity, which is going to be 1 blue. So we can pay 1 life, 3 mana, and draw a card, which is not bad. We need some card draw at some point, and this is a way to get it. If you have other cards that you have slot into your Urza build, or other things that you would recommend, please let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear some suggestions and feedback. And if you've been playing Urza a while, we would love to hear how it's worked out for you and what type of meta you've played it in.